So... Okay, so he's... Welcome, acolytes. Today I am reacting to... Optimus. Jack the Viking is coping about being exposed. Pathetic. I don't know about this right now. This is, by the way, again, agent of social media chaos. Again, did me a good solid one with this actual video. I probably wouldn't find it on myself. And I'm just Jack the Viking. I don't know what this is about, but what I want to say with the thing I just said is, I know he's in the Mr. Beast thing, but I also didn't cover the Mr. Beast thing that critically because it's not that interesting to me right now. For some reason, I'm just more in the VTuber stuff. But this is actually quite interesting that somebody probably just throws Mr. Beast under the bus. And what I assume is that he also tippy toes his little whiny feet in some perverted way. Maybe not, who knows. But as you can see, I already subbed to Optimus, so is it going here? No, I didn't. Well then, let's repeat that. Repeat these steps and press a like if you actually like it. If we don't, we're gonna just unlike it. Do the same with me. So, let's just start.
Welcome back to another video here on the channel, and today we're going to be talking about Jake the Viking. Now this is more or less, I guess, a little bit of an update video to yesterday's video about the Mr. Beast stuff, but we have some very interesting responses from Jake the Viking that I want to take a look at here because he's been kind of spiraling out on Twitter ever since this whole thing really kind of came to light.
So it's basically watching a man having a meltdown. Depends on who he is. I'm either gonna have some compassion with him or not. But I'm also not the type for compassion entirely. I actually struggle with that one a bit. Okay.
In my last video, toward the end, I actually showed his full initial response to everything on Twitter. I'm going to do so again at the beginning of this one, and
okay,
then
good,
there's
good.
a bunch of responses after that to take a look at, including a bunch with yours truly involved. So for
nice. So he beefed up. He did. So Optimus did what he had to do. That's always good to hear. That's always nice to see, especially if they actually prove the things they are talking about. I love that. I don't have the time for that. I wish I had more time, but anytime I do it, it's just not feasible for me. So I'm happy if somebody does it. It's always fun. Don't you, acolytes? I assume you agree. Most of you will agree with that one.
For those of you who don't know the backstory, Mr. Beast has been getting kind of cooked over the last few weeks for a bunch of different allegations.
Yep, he supports a lot of pedos
that have come forward. Now, there's a ton of different things to talk about when it comes to that, and I've already done that. So I'm not going to spend this whole video talking about faking the lottery giveaways and not treating show contestants or whatever as they should have been, right? I've already discussed all that yesterday for an hour. Today, I'm just going to focus in on Jake the Viking because, as it turns out, during his time at Mr. Beast, there was a brother-in-law of his, okay, who was also hired on, technically before Jake the Viking, but...
Oh, and the brother-in-law is the... I assume the brother-in-law did some freaking bad stuff. Okay, would make sense.
This brother-in-law of Jake the Vikings, who was also his manager, who went by the name Delaware, was supposedly called Delaware because he was no longer allowed to go back to Delaware due to a child sexual assault case that he was...
Okay, again, the next one. Outstandingly, how many of those actual freaks are running around and get hired? What the...
convicted of many years ago, and even knowing that he had a charge against him for sexually assaulting an 11-year-old girl, that
11? What the... Okay, maybe he was 12. Maybe he was a stupid kid.
by the way, turned into a conviction. It wasn't like he went to court and beat the case or, you know, escaped charges. He is a convicted sex offender on the registry, okay? Now, this guy was
Okay.
hired at Mr. Beast and was a manager at Mr. Beast and worked with Jake the Viking in the background and everything. Well, fast forward all this time later and the Chris Ava Tyson stuff comes out. Well, Jake the Viking is all over social media talking about just how Jimmy knew and Mr. Beast knew. July 23rd,
Jimmy knew, no accusable, none accountability, none. The silence is deafening. It just getting worse. Here's the truth. Yes, Delaware is my brother-in-law. He is a RSO when he was 21 and a 20-year-old, a 16-year-old got accused him and another SA when she was 11. Delaware took a plea deal. That's why there's no jail time. So... okay, so he's in all likelihood he did it. In all likelihood he did it, probably. Like, it's... oh, holy shit, is this bad? And yes, of course, yeah, of course. He's like, this is like Mr. Beast knew.
Jimmy knew. July 24th. None. July 24th.
Yeah, hypocritical.
The silence is deafening. July 25th. It just keeps getting worse. And then, of course, here in August, he had to admit that, yeah, his brother-in-law is a registered sex offender as well. Now, obviously, everybody has been dunking on Jake the Viking because while he was so quick to jump up on his soapbox and point the finger at Chris Ava Tyson for being a child groomer and all these other things that came out, right? His own brother-in-law that he's going to go on to defend and actually literally defend has literally a sex offender registry entry. You know, he's on the registry for SA.
Yep, and that's bad. But yeah, I mean, calling this stuff out isn't the problem with this, in my opinion. The only problem that is represented here is that he's this hypocritical about it, and yeah, he didn't admit from the start that his brother is actually an SA, like SA distributor. F me. But yeah, this is gonna be honest, mate. F you for that one. Damn.
Of an 11-year-old girl when he was a 16-year-old, right? So obviously anyone with like two brain cells that can kind of connect to one another a little bit, they can see the issue here, right? The fucking hypocrisy that reeks of this situation. Now, under normal circumstances, yeah, it's always a good thing to call out child groomers and people who are just weird towards kids. And
it is, and he did a good thing of calling it out. He's still a hypocrite. He's still hypocritical, but he did a good thing there to call him out. So yes, I'm a bit on the fence about it.
Whatnot. But when your own family is full of these kinds of people and you have these types of people, you know, that you work with at Mr. Beast.
That's a bit overkill because am I really defending this? Yes, I have to. You're being unfair right now, Optimus. It's not that his family is full of those people, it's specifically his brother. Don't go the route of, okay, because one of them is in there, everybody's in there. Don't. It's fine. Just, he did a mistake. And I'm not protecting him, by the way. I still think he's a scum. He's scum for that. But don't be unfair to the entire family. Just because two people are total idiots, maybe the rest of the family are also bad, but right now we don't have any proof of that, so we shouldn't jump the gun and do bad thing or say bad words about them.
That you keep not saying shit about, really, you know? Maybe a very odd mention of it here and there, it just very, very rarely, right? While you keep sweeping that shit under the rug and making sure that's not fucking press line news, you want to point the finger at everyone else, though, right? And so, obviously, the internet has been pointing this out. People have been calling him out for this because it's just fucking ridiculous and he's very clearly coping. Well, he's decided to respond to everybody criticizing him for being a hypocrite and defending his registered sex offender brother-in-law, right? So, it all really starts here. Here's the truth. Yes, Delaware's my brother-in-law. Yes, he's an RSO. When he was 21, a 16-year-old girl accused him and others of SA when she was 11. Delaware took a plea deal. That's why there was no jail time, but he still had to register. His nickname isn't Delaware because he can't go back to Delaware. He's from Delaware. It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. He's been back several times. He was hired before I was and was actually the reason I got hired at Mr. Beast. Before being hired, Delaware sat down with Jimmy and Sue, Jimmy's mom, and explained him everything. Yes, Jimmy knew, but the incident happened in 2010. Delaware was hired in 2017 or 2018. He was also let go from the company before I was. Delaware was supposed to be a behind-the-scenes manager in a couple videos. He was asked to partake because we needed people. He was reluctant, especially with the charges in the straitjacket video and everything, and that's why he wore the mask. Delaware's charges are set to be dropped this fall. Delaware's been nothing but a good person, an amazing husband to my sister, and the best father to my 2 nieces that I could ever ask for. They want no part in this and want to just live their lives away from the limelight. I understand why anyone would be upset and frustrated over these allegations, and I don't blame them. Hurting kids in any way is completely unacceptable, but in the case of Delaware, I firmly believe he did nothing wrong and look forward.
I firmly believe. Irrelevant, mate. Irrelevant.
To the day these charges are dropped. Thank you. All right, so that was his first initial response to everything. Obviously, it didn't go over well. People were cooking him in the comments. People were fucking torching his shit, including myself. You know, I said, you knew and Mr. Beast knew for years that this guy was a convicted sex offender who violated an 11-year-old girl. Now,
just don't hire him, by the way. We're literally in a freaking mindset of actually rewarding criminals for their fucking behavior. No, they should bleed for it until the end of their lives. Maybe not as harsh as going to prison, but there should be a stigma until they freaking die. Maybe I am alone on this because I am a harsh person, but I am sorry, most criminals just don't get around and become good people suddenly. And we shouldn't just freaking exterminate them, but go to the root of the problems. Why does this exist? And get this away. Not if somebody actually does something bad, we reward him by just not punishing them enough. And this is what happened here. His fucking brother just got rewarded, got hired in a freaking awesome job, probably awesome job, highly paid, and he's just a freaking sex offender. SA offender. Damn, I am mad about this.
Now you sit here when it's all exposed and finally say something when you should have years ago. You're just as complicit as the rest of them, and fuck your pedophile brother-in-law. Now obviously, Jake did not respond to this tweet. In fact, he doesn't respond to the vast majority of tweets that are criticizing him like this. Because there's actually a good point being made, right? Like, once again, you knew that this was all going...
Let's be honest here. Optimus, you gave him an out. You weren't respectful with him. You told him, F you, fuck you, you and your brother. And this is a getaway out of jail card for victims. Basically, you can now pretend that he is a victim of yours. Just because you were a bit harsher on him. By directly tweeting. If you were just calm, it wouldn't be that way.
On, you knew that your sex offender brother-in-law was being hired at a children's entertainment company that makes YouTube videos primarily designated for children. You saw no problem with that. Nobody at Mr. Beast apparently saw any problem with that whatsoever. And then keep in mind, he literally says in his initial whole statement on this that he firmly believes his brother-in-law did nothing wrong and he looks forward to the day the charges are dropped. So I want to go ahead and comment on that really quickly. The likelihood that these charges will be quote-unquote dropped. Now keep in mind, this conviction happened all the way back in 2010, which means that this conviction has been sitting on this guy's record for almost 15 years now. Now,
Yep.
typically, when court decides to drop charges, we're dropping the charges against somebody, that happens before they're convicted. Now, it can happen for a multitude of reasons. It can happen because there's a lack of evidence. Maybe the police, when gathering evidence, mistook the wrong steps and violated someone's constitutional rights. There's a lot of different reasons that it can happen, but when charges are dropped, as Jake the Viking is trying to claim, it almost always happens before a conviction. Well, the problem here is, this guy was convicted, okay? His brother-in-law is a convicted and...
Correctly, and I might add, it's not that often that someone actually gets convicted for this stuff. And yes, that's something different than saying it still ruins your life if you get accused of stuff like that. In basically 80% of the time. So, yeah, about that. But I think it's about 3%, but don't take me on my word about it. It's minuscule. And then this guy gets actually found out and accused of it. And then, plus that, he got not even... He's innocent about all of this. And there was some mistake? Nah.
And registered sex offender, even by the words of Jake himself. So no, these charges are not going to be quote-unquote dropped. Now, what he probably means is these charges may be expunged, okay? Now, an expungement just basically means that after the crime has already been convicted, you've already served your time or whatever penalty you get, right? Years down the road, if you had good behavior or you copped a plea deal or whatever, they may take the charge off of your record all the way down the road. It doesn't mean you weren't convicted, it doesn't mean you weren't guilty, and it doesn't mean that the crime never happened. It simply means that after a certain period of time, the court shows leniency if you acted properly. And of course, we all know that his brother took a plea deal, so there's a very good chance that that is what's happening. He's getting his record expunged after almost 15 years. Because the crime happened when he was 16, that's when he committed sexual assault, and he took a plea deal. It's not because he's innocent, it's not because they found new evidence, or, they're figuring out that he didn't do it, nothing like that. And if that was the case, the prosecutor would come out and announce it or something like that. It would be much more of a big deal. Now, another thing I want to point out here is the odds of a false conviction, right? Because that's like the argument that these people are trying to use. Well, what if he was falsely accused and falsely convicted? The odds of that are extremely fucking low.
Yep.
Number one, if this guy was innocent, he didn't actually commit sexual assault against an 11-year-old girl, why would he need to take a plea deal to try and lessen his sentence if he had proof or he had a reason to believe?
Lets him seem pretty guilty, yes.
Believe that he was innocent and that he'd be found innocent in a court of law. Well, the most likely answer to that is he didn't think that he was innocent. He didn't think he was going to get away with it in a court of law. And so he copped a plea deal. Now let's also go ahead and consider, too, the odds of this kind of thing happening. So first, I want to point out that when it comes to sexual assault, okay, the conviction rate for sexual assaults, according to a 2012 study between victims, the conviction rate for these things is between 0.3 and 1.6%, according to...
Okay, I was a bit off. But also a very old study. But I could be also wrong about that.
Saunders law, the conviction rate for rape is less than 2%. So when it comes to this heinous crime being committed, it's already vastly underreported, it's vastly underconvicted, because it's sometimes pretty hard to prove that things like this happened. But that's the thing about American court, okay? There has to be proof that, something took place, that a crime was committed. So what do you think the odds are that this guy walked into one of the, least convicted crimes that you can have, right? And there just was so little evidence that they falsely convicted him. The odds are astronomically low.
Oh, and I always forget this is American court. But Germany, it doesn't look that different. Maybe it's because of those two things.
That's what took place. This guy, as far as anyone should be considered, is convicted, okay? Now, Jake has a meltdown about this on Twitter when people start actually calling him out and applying a little bit of pressure to his ass because, really, there's no good defense for any of this, right? So, at least I can say I've always been upfront and honest. I never fabricated or lied about details. The storm isn't over yet. And so I respond with this. You literally hid this information while going after Chris Tyson and Beast for the whole situation recently. You're not upfront or honest, and on top of that, you're a pedophile defender yourself. A mission of
Optimus, you're correct.
fact is still lying, dummy. You're right. The storm isn't over yet. Absolute ratio. And then, a few minutes later, I follow it up with, it's funny how Jake refuses to engage with comments like these, which actually point out the truth on what's going on, but he'll argue with others underneath this very thread. We all see through it. Now, keep in mind, up until this point, Jake took no opportunity to respond to anything I said, and for the most part, what a lot of other creators and people had been saying either. He would very notably cherry pick which things he responded to, if they were softballs or even if they were in support of him or whatever. And then magically, minutes after this—
Holy shit, somebody supported him. Well, okay, yeah. Yeah. There are some, yeah.
Tweet gets made and people start seeing it, he decides to start responding. Now, you're going to notice a problem with Jake's responses. Number one, they very frequently are just ridiculous. They don't actually mean anything. He's not making a good point with anything he says. He doesn't have any proof. He's just saying shit, okay? And number two, when you actually, once again, apply a little bit of heat to him and you ask him the hard questions, he conveniently stops responding to your tweets about that, but will respond to other ones. See what I mean? I've been engaging. The fuck you on about? You didn't respond to my last point on your initial post with thousands of likes, and you didn't even take the time to form a response to this one. You didn't have shit to say until I called you out either. Don't play like you're here to take the criticism. Now, of course, he didn't actually respond to this tweet, because what can he really say? Nothing I said is actually wrong here. And nothing that most people are saying in his comments is actually wrong here. It's just objectively the facts. He is on here defending a registered sex offender because he quote-unquote firmly believes he did nothing wrong, though he's been convicted for the better part of, what, a decade and a half now? But of course, even though Chris Ava Tyson wasn't convicted, wasn't charged, I'm not saying anything to defend Chris Tyson here, right? But Chris Tyson wasn't charged, but there was no defense from Jake there. And what was the reason why there was no defense from Jake there? Well, because he could actually gain clout and sympathy and attention off of it, right? Because it makes him look like the good guy from the Mr. Beast crew who finally spoke out about everything.
Yeah, and I am happy that he actually got gotten on this one. That's always a nice thing to see. I'm just happy about it that he got gotten. You may say that's heartless, and I say, yeah, I know.
But that's not really the case. He only talks about situations exclusively if they don't harm his own reputation, or make him look complicit and guilty in the entire situation. I didn't hid anything. The information on my brother-in-law's public info. If people wanted to look it up, they could. He was also already charged with the crime, unlike Chris, who hasn't been charged at all and actually has evidence against him. Good try, Optimus, but you swung and missed. Okay, so this guy is like trying to actually insinuate that there was just no evidence whatsoever that convicted his brother-in-law of a sexual crime. He wants you to actually believe that, once again, a crime in which like 2% of people who commit it are supposedly convicted ever. He wants you to believe that he is not only one of the 2% who got convicted for something like that, but he's also one of a very small fraction of a percent that was falsely accused for it, took a plea deal, like basically admitting some fault, was convicted of it, and had the charge over it.
Well, that's basically what I said before. Yeah, it's just unrealistic about it. He's arguing total bollocks.
His head for 15 or so years. That's what he wants you to believe. And it's funny that he's too stupid to even see the point that he's actually making here, right? His brother-in-law was charged and convicted with sexual assault of an 11-year-old girl and has that on his record until it maybe gets expunged this month. Maybe. But of course, he has no issue, once again, taking after the people who aren't convicted and the people who aren't actually tried in court. He'll run them down online and shit on them, but not the people who actually do it, right? Not the people who are confirmed, convicted, guilty, right? And he says that, oh, it was public information, as if that means anything. Yeah, the entire sex offender registry list.
Hear me out. Just because it's public information doesn't mean shit in this case. Why? Because I'm not going out and saying, let's just say Rev. That's Rev. What is he about? Is he a pedophile? Let's just look it in. Maybe he is. No, I'm not thinking that. I'm assuming the best from the person right now. No, I won't look it up every time if somebody's a criminal.
This is public information, but unfortunately, I would say 99% of Americans don't know every single name on the sex offender registry list. And 99.9% of people would never have initially thought that you were covering up for your pedophile brother-in-law, so no one even knew that it was an issue to look into. And so what he's doing is he's trying to point it back to everyone else. Well, you guys didn't look it up. You guys didn't do your research. It's kind of hard to do research on a topic that nobody knows is a problem, that nobody knows exists. And why didn't people know that that was a problem? Why didn't people en masse know that it existed? Because Mr. Beast, Jake the Viking, and all the other culpable parties in this were silent about the fact that they had hired on a registered sex offender, and that Jake the Viking willingly defends this guy and says that he believes he did nothing wrong. So it's actually your fault you didn't know about his pedophile brother-in-law he wouldn't say hardly anything about whatsoever. It's your fault you didn't assume that he was a pedophile and look into it for yourself. That's what he's actually trying to suggest, okay? That's how stupid the arguments this guy comes up with are. And of course, he gets completely torched in the comments, you know what I mean? Everybody just fucking destroys him. He gets cooked. And so Jake does what he always does in these situations. When he starts losing and people bring up good points and they're ratioing him and they're cooking him, he disappears from the thread. He stops talking altogether. He stops saying anything and he tries to move on to the next one. But there's a problem. This is an entire line of people trying to felt him, trying to fucking, paddle him for what he's doing, for the defenses that he's bringing up for his pedophile brother-in-law. So just because I know someone who did something bad and was convicted means I can't call others out for doing bad? That's a wild take, Tom. And keep in mind, that's his response to Turkey Tom, another commentary YouTuber, saying that Jake the Viking constantly tweeting about Mr. Beast knowing Chris Tyson being a creep, for it to come out that his own brother-in-law, who worked for Mr. Beast, is an actual sex offender, is hilarious. Because it is. This guy is too stupid to realize the hypocrisy that he's committing. Either that or he knows what he's doing and he's just maliciously doing it, which would be even worse, obviously, but stupidity and malice are a deadly combo. I've said that before, and I'll say it again. So his actual point that he's trying to make is, well, just because I defend my pedophile brother-in-law who assaulted an 11-year-old girl and has had the conviction for over a decade, right, it means you won't respect me for calling out other groomers and pedophiles on the internet? Yeah, I mean, yeah, you can say something, you can feel free to, but the fact that everybody is torching the shit out of you and calling you a pedophile defender and cooking you for doing basically, just as bad by allowing your fucking sexual predator brother-in-law to work at a children's company, you don't seem to like it when people bring that up. You don't seem to like it when people make that point. But of course, you can sit here and say whatever you want, but if people respond and actually bring up the truth and the reality and the facts, you get butthurt about it and you get a little fucking sad. And the reason you get sad is because it makes you look like an idiot. And it makes you look like a malicious one at that, right? So it's not a wild take at all. You're a hypocrite who omitted the fact about his brother-in-law being a convicted child sex predator to your audience while you stood on your high horse. Keep coping about it though. No one is coping, buddy, laughing emoji. Nothing was omitted, but hey man, keep tweeting out your was for views. No one is coping the guy who is responding to fucking tweets only because he's getting felted and that's all his timeline is right now. Yeah, he's not coping, by the way. He's just getting fucking destroyed by everybody he responds to just because, right? He's not coping at all. And so I provided him the
sounds like fun.
Definition of what an omission is, which is a person or a being that has been left out or excluded. And then I asked him, well, you had plenty of chances during your time up there of shitting on Ava Chris Tyson and whatnot to be like, oh, and also my brother-in-law, a sex offender, has worked at Mr. Beast as well, and, that's been covered up. But of course he didn't, but why didn't he, And keep in mind,
Optimus, come on, bro. Come on. Of course he didn't, because it's freaking... It's truly a disgusting behavior and would look... he would look extremely bad because of it. Of course he didn't say it. I understand why he didn't say it. I don't agree that he didn't say it.
He's already in the trap. He's already responded. So at this point, him dodging this question is just obviously him refusing to accept or respond to what's being said. But of course, keep in mind, he's here engaging. He's here responding until, once again, you bring up a question that he can't cope his way out of. And so he didn't respond to this. But of course, he did omit the fact that his brother-in-law was pedophile, was a sex offender. How many times in his videos or in Mr. Beast videos have you seen Jake the Viking loud and proud announce this? How many times has he talked about it in public? Talked about it
Optimus, that's unrealistic. Nobody should do that. Especially, okay, he defends him, that's one point. But he didn't do it. So I don't think that he is obligated to actually do that. It would be the moral thing to do, but he's not obligated to it. It would be better that he does, but as I said, he's not obligated to that. And of course, if this would be me, I wouldn't go around Stroll and say that one of my family members is a criminal. That's illogical. That's something you cannot expect. What you can expect is, if you say something like that in a tweet and you're a person like him that's out there, YouTube is his job, he's an influencer, actually admits, hey, I have experiences with that, not gonna go deeper in it, but yes, I agree this is fucked up. If he did that, there wouldn't be a problem in my opinion.
To his audience.
Or if he just argued like me.
About everything regarding him. Not just, oh yeah, that's my manager and brother-in-law Delaware. They call him that because that's where he's from, like he tweeted back in 2018. I mean ones where he shows the fucking registry that has his brother-in-law on there and says, this is who worked for Mr. Beast and it's my brother-in-law. He never brought that up. He never brings that up so everybody can see it. Until it became fucking huge and got blown up by Dogpack 404's videos and everyone else talking about it. So yes, that is you omitting the fact that your brother-in-law is a sex offender. That is, by definition, a lie of omission. But he's not smart enough, or he's too malicious to actually accept this. It's one or the other. It may honestly be both. But realistically, it's probably just one or the other here, right? So, I mean, he does what he typically does after this, right? He tries to start responding through other people's comments and stuff so he doesn't have to actually comment under this question and answer why he, lied by omission. And so he starts trying to do this shit here where he goes, so convicted people aren't allowed employment? And what do you mean support pedophiles? Be careful answering that one. So you're going to notice what he does here, right? He tries to very subtly change the words that he uses in specific points through his sentences so that it comes off less, I guess, abrasive, if that makes sense. For instance, he did it the first time in his initial post when he said that his brother's charges are going to be dropped, even though the chances of them actually being full out dropped and removed altogether is pretty goddamn low. And the odds are they're just being expunged because of his plea deal, which doesn't actually admit any fault by the prosecutor or anything whatsoever, right? So he changes the word there in order to make it come off of a more soft landing, right? Oh, well, the charges are being dropped, because if he said they're being expunged, he still has to admit the guilty verdict and whatnot, right? And then now he's doing it here. So convicted, quote unquote, people aren't allowed employment? Well, no, not in certain instances, they're not. So, like I said in another...
Yes. Oh my, yeah. Oh, I know the point he's doing right now because I just got the same thought. Yeah, okay, yeah, let's just...
Their comments under this, right? If a sex offender, a registered one at that, like his brother-in-law, went and tried to get a job at, say, Chuck E. Cheese so he could clean the ball pit for the kids, right? There's a very, very astronomically high chance that he's going to be declined for that.
Correctly, as it should be.
Job opportunity. And it's completely legal, by the way. There's no problem with it. So if that children's entertainment company is able to deny people for sex offender stuff, why can't Mr. Beast and his child entertainment company deny pedophiles the same opportunities? And then he asks me, what do I mean supporting pedophiles? I think I answer it pretty well by saying it's his brother-in-law and he's on here grandstanding for him, saying he, quote, did nothing wrong and that you stood by him as he was hired to make content for children. I think that's a good measure for the word support. And I think the majority of people would say that.
I still think you worded it a bit disingenuous, but I still agree with you. The wording could have been a little bit better, but I agree with you to a degree. Maybe he doesn't support other pedos, but he definitely did it with his brother without any, and I mean it's still family, so I am looking for some kind of thinking like why, so I understand his reactions to it, but damn, man, it's
That's probably, the right way to describe support in this situation, right? But of course, Jake doesn't want to actually outright say that because it makes him look bad. Instead, he's going to say something infinitely fucking dumber and worse. Considering I know the full story and have tried to say it here, but no one can read apparently, yes, I believe he did nothing wrong because of how easy it is for a girl to cry wolf. Seen it dozens of times in the sports world, and I wasn't hired till after him. Another part y'all apparently didn't read. Now, I don't believe he knows the full story because I'm pretty certain he didn't know the brother-in-law when he was 16 years old and committed the sexual assault of an 11-year-old girl. So what Jake the Viking means is by I know the full story, he knows what the convicted pedophile told him at family dinners and at family gatherings. Which how many of these people, by the way, who are convicted of this shit do you know walk around like, yep, I diddled a child, it's all me, brother? Like, that's not something that happens, okay?
Correctly. He will lie to protect himself, yes.
People are not walking around saying that. So he knows what a pedophile told him, and he takes that at face value because it's his brother-in-law. And he believes that he did nothing wrong. He says that even in this tweet, verbatim. He believes he did nothing wrong. So he believes that the court was wrong to prosecute him. He believes that the court was wrong to find him guilty, or the jury even to find him guilty. He believes that all of them, they're stupid. They didn't know what they were doing. The people who've held the conviction in place for over a decade, they didn't know what they were doing, right? And he also apparently believes this because, quote unquote, of how easy it is for a girl to cry wolf. So his actual point here is he thinks that his brother-in-law who was convicted is innocent because he thinks that girls have it easy and can cry wolf, girls can just, they can just cry wolf whenever they want to. Keep in mind, his point hinges on the idea that an 11-year-old girl lied about being sexually assaulted by...
Yes. But this will be a bit, yeah. Fuck it. I'm already fucked for this opinion, so I don't care. But yes, a woman can actually cry wolf way easier than a man can. And yes, it's pretty easy for them. Now, do I think that it's in this case? No, definitively not. Now, do I think that it actually goes for this specific one? No, of course not. That's bollocks. He is probably guilty. I believe that truly that he did something very, very wrong. I mean his brother. He's defending him in any case he can, like just what's in his power he will do, and it's his brother, so okay, good. I have a certain understanding of that one, but at the end of the day, yes, women can cry wolf way easier than men can, and the reputation damage you get is actually quite bad, and you cannot defend yourself against it. Now, is it in this case? No. As I said, no, it's not. And yeah.
By a 16-year-old boy, and apparently others were involved as well, right? So she was maybe gang assaulted, you know what I mean? But apparently she's lying about that. She lied about that. At the age of 11, that's what this whole point is supposed to hinge on. And what is his proof or his reasoning or his rationale? Knowing the full story, quote unquote, for why this guy is innocent. Is it because there was no evidence in the court or anything like that? No. Not at all, right? Nothing like that. It's because he's, quote unquote, seen it dozens of times in the sports world, okay? So he's apparently seen all of his favorite athletes or whatever just getting fucking accused of assaulting 11-year-old girls. Now, I'm a pretty big sports fan myself. If you follow me on Twitter, you probably know that. I'm constantly tweeting about football, soccer, baseball, basketball, Olympics, whatever it is, right? And I'm sitting here racking my brain on these dozens of athletes who have been accused recently of assaulting children sexually. Now, sure, some of them get accused of like misconduct and assault and whatnot on adults, on grown women, but how often is it that they get accused of, doing this to an 11-year-old girl? Better yet, how many of these stories come out of sports players here in the US doing this to an 11-year-old girl, not a full-grown woman? And not only that, but it turns out that the 11-year-old girl was lying, okay? How many times have you seen that? Well, apparently, Jake the Viking has seen it dozens of times in the sports world. Apparently, Buddy, his only sports world he knows of is the Penn State locker room while Joe Paterno was in control. That's the...
Yep, in this specific context, yes. I do not believe it for a second that he is actually innocent for this one, so no. In the sports world, I don't watch sports that often, so not really caring here, but the argument is still bullshit. Not Optimus' argument. That's fine.
Only sports world he knows. Because that's just not the fucking case. In fact, the most notable case I can think of any athlete having any sort of relations with a child is Karl Malone, who had, I believe, a child out of wedlock with like a 13 or 14-year-old girl back in like...
Ooh, this... Ugh. Ugh.
Like the 80s or 90s. But of course, that was like 30 or 40 years ago. You know what I mean? That wasn't yesterday or last week when his brother-in-law was getting convicted. So I'm just confused on what he means by that. So don't get it twisted here. He's actually suggesting and victim blaming that an 11-year-old girl made up the fact that she was gang assaulted by his brother-in-law and others for just whatever reason. And he knows the full story, he says. He's even tried to say it here. But of course, there's no evidence or any point that he's actually making. It's all hinged on, well, I see it happen to athletes. No, you really don't. That's the problem. You don't see it happen to athletes, okay? Some of them, yes, they are falsely accused. You know, it happens every once in a while. There's been a few notable incidents of that happening, but it never happens with children. And also, they're never actually convicted. That's the difference here, too. He's trying to pretend like there wasn't an actual conviction where the court found him guilty. You don't fucking read, do you? Jesus Christ, man. Putting words in my mouth, changing the story. You're just the next Keemstar. Well, no, I'm not the next Keemstar. I'm Optimus. Keemstar still exists. He's still a person, and he's actually felting you too. That's the funniest part about this. As you're trying to proclaim I'm the next Keemstar, he's out here felting you too, and he's cooking your shit too. So maybe focus on that one a little bit, but also...
Yeah, and Keemstar had a bit of shed thing going on, and it wasn't nice. So if Keemstar cooks him, I understand. And it's not even that bad.
So let's go ahead and address that. Apparently, I don't read, even though I've provided you now 13 screenshots of what this guy said verbatim and responded to it directly verbatim, right? That's me not reading, even though I read everything off to you guys. And I'm putting words in his mouth, and I'm changing the story. Now, once again, it's kind of hard to do that when you have 13 screenshots of the person saying directly what you just read them saying, but I get what you're trying to do, right? This is his cope out, okay? So now he's been so defeated in the argument, he couldn't respond to the point of, oh, why did I cover up my sex assaulting brother-in-law working at a children's entertainment company? He couldn't address that. He couldn't bring up a reason or a rationale for it when he was directly asked about it. He victim blamed an 11-year-old girl, suggesting that she lied about the story and cried wolf because it happens to a lot of popular athletes that he likes. He repeatedly said he believes that his brother did nothing wrong despite there being a legal criminal conviction, which in this country means that you're guilty. But apparently I'm putting words in his mouth and I'm mixing it all up and I'm spinning a tale here, I'm lying. Well, there's hours worth of me talking about this online now. You know what I mean? I have a whole hour-long video about Mr. Beast yesterday. You can feel free, Jake the Viking, to pick it apart and feel what you dislike or you don't think is true. Feel free to point that out to me. In fact, under this very tweet where he told me I don't read and I'm putting words in his mouth, I specifically asked him to give me specific examples of where I did this and where I apparently lied about him and made shit up and misconstrued his arguments. But like the question about why he defended the brother and why he's, you know, defending them being hired and why he's covering everything up and why he's ducking arguments, that's what he did again, okay? He stopped responding. Isn't that curious how that works? But of course, it's just me twisting his words. I'm twisting everything so badly. I'm just lying about him. I'm making things up. I'm not...
Damn, Optimus. You're worked out about this. Just chill, man. Damn. Brother. Calm down. For F's sake. Of course a degenerate will defend himself. That's to be expected at this point. I'm not saying it's good, but it's to be expected. You can accept it, you don't have to like it. Damn, man.
Bringing up good evidence, you know what I'm saying? Like, whatever, bro. You can sit here and you can cope all you want. You know what I mean? You can sit here and make up whatever the fuck you want. You can sit here and try and you're twisting my words. Okay, then prove it, bitch. Go ahead and prove it. Go ahead and prove where I twisted your words. Go ahead and prove where I misconstrued you or lied about you. I'll be waiting. And I'm sure plenty of other people will too. So with that being said though, thank you guys for watching. If you did enjoy, make sure...
Okay, he was on a small rant here, but I'm gonna be honest, it's not that bad. Actually, I agree with a lot of points. Some points, as I see it, are a bit too emotional for my taste. I think he's going in a bit too hard, but hey, it's entertaining enough. So, Acolytes, as it is, good night.